So when it comes to world building, what do you focus on the most?
Uh, oof.
Or maybe first?
It was actually, I think, the world building kind of came secondary to it. Uh,
Oh,
the I think once I had initially gotten the main idea down for the story, and kind of like who my main characters were going to be, I then kind of started working on, like the different factions and everything.
yeah, yeah.
Which that to me, I think was most important. Because in this story, the elves have established like an imperium, which is kind of like this section of land that's, you know, blocked off from most other contact, either men that have either abandoned the place from a war that happened a long time ago. They kind of just fell into despair, like I would rather just leave this place instead of staying to fight. Well, the elves,
Yeah,
they all
yeah.
stayed and fought.
Hmm.
Um, so they all established an imperium, and then there's five different houses of elves, and each one's kind of a little bit more independent from each other, but they still come together all under one imperium and well in the same. So like trying to make sure each one is distinct in and of themselves, and like how does that affect each person in charge's personality, or each character
Yeah,
from the
yeah.
different house, how does that affect how they communicate with other houses. And then the different factions of men or dwarves. Dwarves are suspected to be extinct, but who knows? Maybe that question will be answered in a future book. Um,
That's awesome.
but
How would you know if they're living underground, right? Like maybe they're
it,
just
exactly,
yeah.
exactly, exactly, yeah. But I think that was kind of the big part of it, was kind of just like figuring out the different factions or the different tribes that kind of just make up this world. And okay, where do these people live? Okay, the elves of House Stag, they live in the forest. The elves of House Stallion, they live on the plains. So it's trying to establish like where each faction would live. Like the tribe of men it's introduced in the book, the Ruska, they live in the far north. They're very much inspired, if you couldn't tell, by the Norska from Warhammer Fantasy. So,
Oh,
but
that's cool.
instead of like making them like Vikings, I'm like, let me kind of like take a different approach. So, how I kind of came up with the Ruska name was I looked up the Rus, from the Viking era, and the
Mm.
tribe, which is basically old Russia, which is where
Oh, that's
that's
cool.
eventually where they all came from. So that was kind of like,
Mm.
let me take more of an inspiration from that part of the world instead of
Mm.
just do the traditional like
Oh, yeah.
barbaric Vikings and everything like that. So let me try to see if I can differentiate them
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
myself, but also like try to give them their own personalities as well. So that to me, that is the most important, is trying to figure out your people that inhabit your
I
world
love that.
first, and where your people would live, and like how that has affected how they interact with the world. It
Mm.
could also infect wow it all could also affect how they view the world as well, like there's certain religious or political beliefs or something like that. So I think that's very important, especially whenever you're world building. I think it's to, if you have a cool map and if you have everything cool, that's really cool. But a story requires people to inhabit that map, whether that's people, animals, or anything like that. So I think it's really important, and it was really important to me to like figure out, okay, where do these people come from? How many of them are there? What different factions are there as well?
Mm.
So that was definitely, I think, the first part of it. Once I had gotten kind of the main cast of characters down, was trying to figure
Oh,
out,
cool.
okay, well, where do they belong? Which tribe do they belong to?